A strong abundance of centers characterizes the week best for the college football prospects on the offensive side of the ball. What's going on, everybody? Good morning. And usually we do this segment on Wednesday, but I didn't have the stuff ready by yesterday. So I just decided to go ahead and say, since I'm not really doing that much this week anyway because of the bye week, I'll just go ahead and push it back to a Thursday. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these college football prospects. It was better than last week, I think. Still a couple of positions that I thought were just completely underwhelming, but not too bad. Not too down on the prospects on this particular week. Although I will say that once again, the quarterback list, and that's the thing we're going to start with here, is populated by quarterbacks who I don't really value, even though they did play well this week. Like, I value Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's a good player. I think he is certainly worthy of being a first round pick at this point. And if the Seahawks ended up with him, I would certainly be excited about that. But other than that, look at the other quarterbacks I got here. You got Will Howard, great game for OSU, 3 touchdowns, only 5 incomplete passes, 4 total touchdowns. 80.4 PFF grade, but Will Howard's not the guy I want to be building my NFL franchise around. That's not a guy I'm going to be really that excited for if you draft him at any point. Right? Quinn Ewers, okay, maybe there's a little bit of room there, but I've just seen a lack of what feels like a lack of growth from Ewers over the last, I'd say, year almost. I feel like the peak was almost a month into his campaign last year, and since then I've just been waiting for him to take that next step, and now they're saying he might stay back in college for another year at like Vanderbilt. That probably tells you that he knows NFL teams aren't really biting. So he had a great game, 5 touchdowns, 333 yards, but still, I still look at that and I go, I don't know if I even want that anymore. Jalen Milroe, I know I don't want. I don't see an NFL quarterback there at all. He had a very interesting game. I put it here more for just to look at this from Jalen Milroe. 109 yards passing, 12 completed passes, but he runs the ball for almost 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that's a very interesting stat line, and good for Milroe, but yeah, I don't see it. I don't see that working all that well in the NFL. I just don't. And then you got Shadur, who played a good game for Colorado. For some reason, PFF was drilling him, but he had over 300 yards of offense, 4 touchdowns. Colorado puts up a bunch of points on their way to a big win. But even that's another guy who I look at and I go, I don't think the juice is going to be worth the squeeze here. The squeeze is going to be there's going to be a real squeeze there. So even with something like this, where I think, okay, we had some quarterbacks step up this week, I'm still just kind of like, who do I actually really like? And the answer is Cam Ward. That's about it. Receivers this week were rough. We didn't get much. We did get some new names though, which is kind of cool, right? Yeah, Jalen Noel of Iowa State. So mark the date and time. Iowa State, the Cyclones, actually have 2 receivers that are getting draft hype this year. We've talked about Higgins before. He's one. This week, we got Jalen Noel. He's the other guy in that ISU offense. 8 catches, 11 targets, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had his big breakout game this week. 82.2, played a really, really good game. Very very intriguing 1-2 punch they have down there in Iowa State, and it's kind of interesting that we're talking about them positively in a game when they lost the game and lost their high ranking. But that receiver 1-2, they I think they belong in the league on Sunday. Kyron Lacey, LSU, 5 catches, 10 targets, so not super efficient, but it was a pretty bad week for receivers. In fact, that's how I would best characterize this week. It was heavy with the centers, which was new, but it was light with receivers, which is disappointing because this is a really good receiver crop, and we're seeing a lot of big names at the position just not really having good weeks. Like Luther Burden, most weeks he's just kind of invisible on the stat line. Guys like McMillan, even in Arizona, where'd they go? But anyway, Lacey, 80 yards and a touchdown. And Ricky White III, another new name here, UNLV. UNLV, they produce NFL players every now and then. This may be another one. 7 catches, 128 yards and a touchdown, 11 targets, 72.4. So he's now getting on the radar as like a late day 3 pick. Maybe he can creep up a little higher than that. But that's roughly what we're looking at right now with Ricky White. And it's good to have new blood on this list because you've got to, you've got to take care of your stuff the whole draft. You can't just be looking at guys that are going in the top 100, and you're going to have to use a premium or pick to even consider being able to get them. Tight end. Interesting week for the tight ends. Terrence Ferguson caught a touchdown, 35 yards on the day, 6 catches, but 2 drops, 12 targets, so very inefficient. And I think he gave up a quarterback hit, so they actually killed him in the grading, 60.5. But, you take the good with the bad sometimes with these mid-level prospects. Tyler Warren had one of the more notable days for a tight end. We saw it up close and personal as Huskies fans. 8 catches, 75 yards, and he also functioned as a short yardage back. 3 carries for 7 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He did lose a fumble, and that actually tanked his grade a little bit down to a 68. But I think we're seeing with Tyler Warren here that he belongs on the field on Sundays, and that if we are able to be the team that drafts him, then there's a potentially bright future there. I think he's becoming tight end too. Oronde Gadsden, welcome back. Haven't talked about him in a while, it feels like. Syracuse, better late than never. 9 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets. Really efficient, highly effective. 73.5 PFF grade. So Gadsden might be making a push. He is talented. We've talked about him before. You got Harold Fannin Jr. This is actually probably one of his lesser games. 7 catches on 8 targets, 86 yards, 93.5. And it feels like he usually does better than that. So, really fun player, interesting player, having an interesting season for the Bowling Green. Final tight end will be CapnQweef, or Quaith. Don't know how to pronounce it. We've talked about him once before. The Utah Utes tight end. 4 catches and a touch for 23 yards and a touchdown. Also ran the ball twice, so he seems like he's being used in that fullback, short yardage back type situation. And a rushing touchdown, 65.2. Interesting name, another late round guy. And a late round guy might be all you're looking for at the tight end position. Plenty of those guys you got to try to find value in. All right, so that's the tight end group. It's okay this week. Nothing hugely explosive, but Gadsden getting back in the mix is very interesting to me. There are always extenuating circumstances surrounding why a player who was hyped just doesn't get to where people were thinking, I find. And his could just be the fact that he's not in a good offense, doesn't have a good quarterback. All right, so let's go out with the offensive line here. And I'll tell you, better than usual overall. I was happy with what I saw from offensive linemen this week. So you got left guard where I found 3 guys. And 3's actually not bad given the fact that you're being very narrow here. The guys who will make better right guards, I'm leaving that out of it. Those guys out of this. We're doing left guards only. I thought Tyler Booker played really well. Finally, PFF gave him a good grade, by the way. Amusing. Didn't allow any pressures. Who they play? No, not Ole Miss. Alabama played, I want to say LSU, but I might be mixing my games up. But no pressures allowed. They ran the ball for over 300 yards, 6.8 yards per carry. And yeah, this is definitely the kind of stuff I'm into right now. I think that I really believe this Seahawks team is a quality left guard away from things getting very, very good very, very fast. And Tyler Booker might be that out-of-the-box day one left guard, let's go guy who can make your offense unlocked. Donovan Jackson, Ohio State, no pressures allowed, 173 rushing yards, about 5 yards a carry. Only a 57.1, and I'll tell you why. It's because of a couple of penalties he had. So the game that he played was, I think, quite good. I think they also docked him on the run blocking for some reason that is difficult to determine without watching every single play. But, yeah, played a good game as near as can reasonably be told, I think. And then you have Joshua Gray. Haven't talked about him in a while. This is not Ohio State. This is Oregon State. Allowed one pressure. They ran the ball for about 4 yards a carry, 182 rushing yards, 68.8 for the Beavers. And that gets us to center, where for the first time this year, I think we have 5 guys. I've been struggling to find centers that are even worth talking about, but this week we may have happened on to something here. We may have actually found a little bit of a cadence here with these centers looking good. Brailsford, leading the way for Alabama's offensive line. That was basically, I will say this, Jalen Milroe, the stuff he does often doesn't really come down to run blocking because a lot of his running is done on passing plays. But I do I do have to give credit where credit's due for a 300 rushing yard game against not a complete pushover of an opponent, not a terrible opponent, just an outmatched opponent, but not a bottom of the barrel team. 67.5. Again, PFF usually doesn't give him any credit. They did this week. Jared Wilson of Georgia. He's another guy who's, I mean, I'm not going to go too far with it, but these Georgia offensive linemen, they generally get churned out pretty darn good. 0 pressures allowed. Georgia couldn't run the ball at all, but I mean, that team overall does have some problems that they usually don't have. 2 yards a carry, 66.9 PFF grade. Logan Jones, kind of a weird week for him, admittedly, but he didn't allow any pressures. Iowa did lose in part because they couldn't run the ball, which is not characteristic of them and maybe reflects poorly on Logan Jones. But it doesn't seem like he was playing poorly and he was the cause of the problems. That's not my evaluation. Seth McLaughlin, a new name for this list, Ohio State center. Hadn't really seen any draft buzz around him until the last week. For Ohio State this week, 1 pressure allowed. They ran the ball well, 173 yards, 4.9 yards a carry, and a 70.5 grade. Maybe he's like a day 3 center that could creep up into that mid-day 3 range even. And Bryce Foster, the Kansas guy. Most weeks he shows up, puts his hat on and puts his hard hat on and just does his thing for a Kansas team that runs the ball really well and sticks to the run first, second, third, and fourth. 67.9 PFF grade, no pressures allowed, doing it. And we also had 4 right tackles here. We had 4, which, I mean, we've done better, but we've also certainly done worse. And a lot of the big names stepped up this week, I feel like, and at least showed the better side of themselves. Emory Jones Jr., who is the big guy in the right tackle room right now. Emory Jones Jr. is probably still the top right tackle in this draft. I don't think that's changed. No pressures allowed, 104 rushing yards, which is not stellar, but decent. And a 76.5 PFF grade. Got Anthony Belton of North Carolina State. But I know he's playing left tackle, but I think he's going to move in the pros because he's bigger. Did allow 1 pressure, 84 rushing yards, so they couldn't run the ball that effectively, but he was doing his job, 70.3. Ajani Cornelius of Oregon. Allowed 1 pressure on the right side, but 180 rushing yards, almost 6 yards a carry, really efficient. 72.9 PFF grade. And Armand Membo of Missouri. This is a guy that I'm starting to really rally around as maybe a consolation prize if you don't get Emory Jones at the right tackle spot. 1 pressure allowed. Missouri didn't really have much of a running game in this game, but Membo was credited with being an effective part of that machine, even if the machine ultimately did not actually go the way it wanted to. Less than 3 yards of carry, you're not thrilled about that. But that's it for the offense this week. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I will see you guys later. A couple of hours. We're going to do the defense, and then we got the show at noon. See you guys later.